Good morning, everybody. I hope you can all hear me clearly. So, today we're just going to have a short discussion on theories, models, and levels of communication, and we will also go on to talk about something else. So, to start off, I want us to talk about the levels of communication. As you can see there, they appear in an inverted pyramid style. Why? Because we start from the smallest form of communication to the biggest. So intrapersonal communication is the first one that we have right at the bottom there. What is that? Intrapersonal communication is when you speak to yourself. So it is literally you speaking to yourself in your mind, and that is intrapersonal. So it's within yourself. Interpersonal then becomes between two people, small group between three or more people, intra-organizational within the organization, inter-organizational between two organizations, external communication, that's when the organization communicates with people outside the organization, and mass communication would then be communication between the organization and the public, like in advertisements or in a TV broadcast or social media blurb, for example. Right, so here's the interesting part, communication theories. So we start right at the bottom with Aristotle, circa 384 to 322 BC. Now, when Aristotle looked at communication, he proposed three main themes or three ways of explaining it, and he identified ethos, logos, and pagos, which Laswell in 1948 attempted to make simpler for us that don't speak Greek. And he then said communication would then be easily defined by who says what, to whom, with what, and what would be the effect. This was then disproved in 1956 because it does not cater for feedback. So it only then addresses one way of communication, which means communication would then just move in one direction from the sender to the receiver, and it says nothing about the receiver giving back any feedback. Now, to expand on this, Shannon and Weaver, who were people who work for the phone company, and they actually wanted to kind of improve communication for the phone company that they worked for, and they identified something called noise. Now, in their model, they argued that a sender encodes a message and then uses a medium to transmit that message. That medium could be anything. It could be air, because then sound travels through the air to the receiver, and then the receiver then decodes that message that has been encoded and sent by the sender. Now, they introduced the concept of noise. What is noise? They argued that noise is any disruption or anything that could cause the message to not be interpreted correctly. So, in your opinion, what do you think could be noise? I could think of any number of things that could be noise. Static, for example, in a phone call. Connection problems in internet connection, electricity like we had yesterday, a couple of other things as well could cause noise in communication. Maybe you could give your own opinion of what you think could be noise in communication, and we will have a little bit of a discussion. Actually, we will do an exercise on noise in communication, but it will be related to listening, and you'll see a little bit later when we get to lecture 4. So Osgood and Schramm then advanced this theory in 1993 and introduced feedback, which is what we said was missing from that 1948 model. Once they've introduced feedback, then the model becomes a little bit more complete, because now we have the sender, we have a medium, we have noise, we have the receiver, and we also have feedback. So I want you to look at 2 more models, and I'll give you extra reading on this. It's in the textbook. I will highlight that in our WhatsApp group. I want you to discuss Harrison's 1995 model and address how it relates to the idea proposed by McQuail and Windle in 1993. And you'll see that from McQuail and Windle, that is where we get the model that is the basis for this course. So throughout this course, we will refer back to this model time and time again, because that is exactly where the base of everything we will talk about comes from. Like we said already, we have the sender, the medium, and the receiver. And if you look at the bottom, the line right on top addresses the feedback from the receiver to the sender, and the line at the bottom addresses some of the noise that could be cause for misinterpretation of messages sent either by the sender to the receiver or the feedback sent by the receiver to the sender. Behind the sender, you'll also see a little bit of what influences the encoding of that model. Okay, so their self-image, what the communicator personality is like, will determine what words they choose or what structure they choose. Do they even use words, or do they use a picture to communicate their model, their message, sorry. And what medium do they choose? That then becomes the selection and structuring of the content there in the middle. And then the medium also impacts a few restrictions on the sender, because what is the medium that you're using? For example, if you're using Instagram, it doesn't make sense for you to write a long letter. If you're using Twitter, then a picture perhaps with a caption might be enough, or you could write your 265 words on Twitter, which is a little bit more effective, I suppose. Or maybe you could put a video on YouTube rather than put a picture on YouTube. So the medium then also puts some constraints on the message and how the sender then encodes that message. The receiver is then influenced by their own personality structure and a few other things. Do they have access to the medium where the message has been sent? How do they perceive that medium? For example, if you sent me something important on Instagram, I wouldn't take it so seriously. Why? Because for me, Instagram is more of a social related kind of medium. Whereas if you put it on Twitter, I'm more inclined to take it a little bit more seriously, because there is a lot of business communication that occurs there. So of that, we have what is called the strategic sport communication model, the SSPC, which is very important for us in our discussion today. So the sport communication model has three very important components. And if you look at component one, it's one that we have already covered. And that covers the levels of communication. So from your interpersonal communication right through to your interorganizational communication. Your component number two on your left will be mediated communication in sport, which is your media, the way that you will transmit interpersonal communication, and social media. And on your right, you have sport communication services and support, which is your IMC, PR, and research. We will cover all those topics as we go through the course. Okay, so my lectures are pretty short, I know, but I'm also thinking about how you would engage yourself into the course. And I want you to do a lot more work than I would do for you. So I don't want to spoon feed you. I want you to do a lot more reading and research on your own. That makes it more interesting for both of us. Okay, so now we're going to talk about integrating sport communication in strategic management. Would you think that communication is a strategic management driver? Perhaps not at first glance, but yes, it is. Sport communication is quite imperative to management processes. Why? Because it is a corporate management tool. First of all, the company needs to be able to build and maintain relationships within the company. And how do you do that? They need to be able to communicate. Communicating between the subsystems inside the organization helps the organization to work a little bit more efficiently. For example, management needs to be aware what the workers on the ground are doing, and the workers need to be aware why they're doing what they're doing, and so on and so forth. So there needs to be a form or a means of communication because it is a strategic management driver. So as such, the mission and the vision statements become very important to the communication departments because you need to know how the company or the organization defines its business objectives and how it will reach those objectives in order to be able to communicate them effectively to all the employees and the stakeholders. And the vision statement, which details where the organization aspires to go, is also paramount to functioning effectively within that organization. And how does an organization normally come up with that vision and mission statement or any plan or strategies? In any case, we need to go through a SWOT analysis. So what is a SWOT analysis? I'm sure you've done this millions of times in your undergraduate studies, and probably in the management course you will and maybe have already encountered SWOT analysis. Right, so this is the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and strengths. I'm not going to waste a lot of time on it. The strengths are, as you would know, internal and would incorporate perhaps the expertise of your team, of your employees, the amount of equipment that you have or the quality of the equipment that you have, technology, perhaps finances as well, support, your communication structure, your systems, your strategic plans, and so on. And the weaknesses also happen to be internal. So if you have low morale, if you have high turnover, those are all weaknesses that organizations can encounter. Opportunities are then external. So what opportunities are there in the market? What threats are there in the market that's also external? For example, COVID-19 could be seen as a threat externally because it could bring all the organization's business transactions to a halt, but also it's an opportunity to progress into a more technological approach, which, well, the pandemic has forced everybody into at the moment. And I think it's a good thing and a bad thing. I don't know what you think. For me, I think there are positives and negatives to it, but I think it's more positive than negative. Okay, so now let's look at organizational stakeholders. And I know you're very familiar with this. I'm sure you've done it from your first year. And I'm saying stakeholders can either be internal or external. I could have done that table for you, but I want you to do it for yourself. Who are the internal stakeholders? And who are the external stakeholders? I look forward to seeing a little bit of that in our conversations, perhaps on WhatsApp. Maybe we can open a discussion page somewhere as well, where we can chat about some of these things and add some value to our notes and some more content, but it would be appropriate for you to add it for yourself. Okay, so what about publics? Is there a difference between stakeholders and publics? I would say there is. Yes, there is. Stakeholders are people who have a vested interest in the company, while publics do not. So publics are then people that can affect or can be affected by the activities of the organizations, but are not directly involved in the organization. For example, I can be affected by how FIFA has banned Ziffer from international competition. I'm not directly involved. I have no stake or interest in Ziffer, but I am a public who has an interest in terms of my nationality and my national pride. So I am affected by the activities of that organization. It's quite a sad occasion as well. The key publics is who the people, what am I trying to say here? Okay, your key public is who your future objectives, strategy, tactics, themes, and messages will be tailored. Oh, okay, your potential market, basically. So when we talk about key publics, it's people that you want to target potentially for your company in order to expand your market or to expand your segmentation group or your target group. Publics are people who, or those who, whose participation is required for communication plan to be effective. So for example, it could be that you want people to watch TV in order for your communication plan to be effective. That's if you do engage in that kind of mass communication, people that you want to discover your YouTube channel, for example, or people that you want to go onto your website. All right, so communicating with stakeholders versus publics, how is this different? When you communicate with your stakeholders, like I said, those people have a direct vested interest in the company. You would mainly use emails, newsletters, brochures, social media like WhatsApp sometimes, or your website. And for the publics, it's mostly mass media. So you would mainly reach these people through advertising, maybe public speaking events, press conferences, newspapers, and other publications. Okay, there are quite a few publications that we will go through eventually, but for the moment, let us stop there. All right, so that is it for today's lecture. Quite short, I believe in very short sessions because I value your data. I want to respect your data, and I don't want to abuse that. Okay, if there are any questions, feel free to communicate on the WhatsApp group, and also feel free to let me know at any time if there is something that you would like me to expand on a little bit more. Extra reading material will be supplied in the group so that you can access it at your convenience.